is it okay with you if I share this in whole and in part on social media?
Yes.
Right. Okay, great. Just like to get that legalese done with. Please, Denicia, is that correct? Denicia?
Hmm.
I did it. Introduce yourself and tell us who you are.
Hey everyone. Tim, thanks so much for having me again. But I'm
You're very
Tunisia
welcome.
Hilton, Harper. And you can kind of think of it as like I created this space. It's kind of like virtual outdoor type of space. It's the perfect playground. And it came out where it is that I've been practicing as a doctor of Eastern medicine, and I just wanted to create a playful spaces for those to come in to just be able to discover and be who they are authentically. And we get to use the body as a tool and as a messenger of just who that is and all of that jazz. Because the idea is that they get to be able to authentically lead in all areas of their life, and to be able to do that with clarity, compassion, and with confidence. So it's pretty fun time if I do say so myself, but the different ways it is that, people get to know themselves more, right?
Hmm.
And then become more comfortable in that, but not just them. It's also, wow, I get to experience this for myself, but then like how can I create that for others? Like as this leader, like how can I do that for others to be able to do the same thing so that we can all like, do our perfect magic glitter in the world in the way that we were designed to. Yeah.
I'm
When even just listening to you is like oftentimes in my material, people would come across the me using the word perfect, and many people cringe at that, right? Because it's a big, huge thing out there that like, oh, nobody's perfect, or embrace the imperfection and all of this. And really like the root meaning is whole and complete of that's the root meaning of perfect. And so like even as you describing like the glimmer being like this opposite of what some might have as a dread is even an example of both exist, right?
mhm.
Like both exist. And then it's just like this acknowledgement that both exist. And then what do we do with it?
Nice.
So yeah, it's pretty cool. Like
Okay, so let's do the rest of the interview. We'll fire through these as quickly as we can to respect your time. With feel free to describe to whatever sufficient, whatever's the right amount of time for you. That's why I actually set aside quite a bit of time in case some answers need to go deeper. So the first one and the new one that you didn't hear last time we spoke was, what question or questions do you think we should be asking ourselves about transforming workplace culture and leadership?
mm, I really like this question. And it's one question. So the question that I feel like we could all ask ourselves is, how can I be more open? And that could be, so I guess that question is even like a fill in the blank after. So like, how can I be more open to conversation,
Hmm.
to acknowledgement, to seeing something differently? Um, just, I think that to be able to be more open creates this space where I could set aside what my expectations might be for any conversation or any idea or any topic, right?
Hmm.
And then to be able to just create the space and be present in this space with whomever it is that's in the room, and being able to just be like, I'm just here. Yeah, I'm just here and open to hear and listen from these different perspectives, so then we can create something new.
I like that. And especially given, because of course I'm coming from the perspective of uh, workplace culture and transformation. That is so much the thing. A lot of people that I've interviewed have talked about this is like, well, unless there's buy-in from top to bottom, and
Mm,
unless people are open to doing something differently, by definition, nothing will change. And oftentimes the biggest barriers come actually from the top. It's like, well, we've done it this way. I was like, yeah, but that's why you're asking for help, because you're not retaining employees, or your employees are sick more often than seems natural, perhaps they don't like being at that workplace. Let's talk about how we can change that. There's lots
Yeah.
of, even if you're just greedy, right? Even if a business person is just greedy, which I think is far from the ideal sort of leader. But even if you're just greedy, when you look at the research and the metrics around, if people love to work for you, you make more money. So if greed is your only goal, if you can still make a place where things like people being open to, okay, can we try it this way? So openness
Yeah.
and receptivity to new ideas, and the idea that making people love their work is
Hmm.
actually in your best interest if making money, especially long term, is your goal. If people hate
Yeah.
where they work, how much effort, and especially discretionary effort, can you expect from them?
Right. And like that's the thing is that when I was referencing like your everyone's perfect magic glitter, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
it's their unique way of seeing things, of doing things, right? And so if you have this culture where it's like, well, this is the issue that we have, and then you just allow them to be who they are and allow all of their gifts, talents, and skills to come out, it'll actually, most times, even the studies have shown that things get innovated faster and implemented faster, right? So they end up actually kind of collaborating better as well because it's like, oh, okay, all know that we have a similar goal and we're just going to kind of like tap into which parts of us has this element, what's experience, excuse me, that I can bring into this, and then we can go and we can create and we can build. And yeah, like when people feel like they have this, they attach their own like meaning and purpose into what it is that they're doing. Like if they really buy into, it's not just the product, but even the company. Like if you can get, they can really get into the vision and into the mission. And you
Mm-hmm.
have those companies that say, you know, this is our mission, this is our vision, and this is what we have this company of people that believe in this. But if they can't express that in the way that it is that they do their work, or like how they could do it, then yeah, like they're just not going to want to be there, and then they're just going to come in and literally do the bare minimum to get by. And so if we go by what you were saying, yeah, if you just are all about the money, like in the greed of the money part itself, it's one of those, if you invest in just even being open to allowing them to do what they do, or like,
Treating your
you know,
people well is a good
yeah.
investment, even if your only purpose is to make more money. That's a real and research demonstrated path to it. While you were speaking, I was listening carefully, but I had to look up what the opposite of a glimmer was.
Oh,
I gave you a link. That's why you saw that link pop up in your chat. And it is, a
okay.
glimmer
I
is
can
the
look it.
opposite, the antithesis to a trigger. So it's sort of
Mm.
like, it's like something that triggers joy and happiness and zenness or whatever it is. So that's what a glimmer is. It's like a moment that, instead of upsetting you or perhaps, hitting a nerve, it calms the nerve. It makes you happy. So like I said, I knew there was a famous word. Yeah. So it's the opposite of a trigger.
Yeah, I'm
And
gonna open it
glitter,
and read it.
glimmer, they kind of go together. So next question is, what are the most significant challenges you face in transforming workplace culture and leadership?
Okay, so we kind of touched on the being open part, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
these kind of go hand in hand.
Mm-hmm.
It's that they say that they're open because they are actually having the conversation, right? They're having the conversation of potentially having someone to come in to do workshop and everything. So they're like, well, I am open because we're talking to you. um, we're gonna like have you come and do this, right? But then I think that that's one side of it, but then I think the biggest challenge is actually implementing what may come out of it. So like I'm imagining now like one of the play shops that we did, and it was so, I could tell it was eye-opening, mind-opening, heart-opening, just for this team. And it was a small team. And at the same time, like, it was a sense of comfort amongst them that, oh, after doing this assessment and seeing just where people lied on what their play style was, what their leadership play style was, and then how much congruency or incongruency in their daily tasks there was compared to it. Now, and then you got to open up to have the conversation. Now, it did take the director to also present this. I'm open to hearing. So that was cool. And then it was like, all right, well, as I'm facilitating, if you know this about yourself now through the lens of this play style predominates for you, and you still have to do social media, which way could you do social media? Like, and then it was this conversation, just allowing the person who was to do it to actually say, well, this is how I prefer to do it, because this is, versus what the director thought needed, the way that it needed to happen. But that's the thing, is the implementation part. So it's like, okay, we're having this conversation, but after that, after that day, after those few hours together, is it really implemented? Has the director and anyone else also like just continued to be open to allow that way to happen, and then to test it? Like, it's all an experiment, right? So it's like, did that really work? And if it did, wonderful, let's keep going, let's refine it, right? And then just keep it moving. So I think that is like the challenge is definitely being open to have someone to have the conversation to come in. But then it's even more of a challenge, I think, to actually implement it, because it does meet what you described earlier of the, like, this is the way we've been doing it,
Yeah.
But yeah, like, so I would say that those two kind of go hand in hand, but I definitely say the implementation part.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's the 1% inspiration, 99% perspiration thing, but also just action speaks louder than words. These are not, new ideas. It's been talked about in Buddhism and philosophy and other things, but it's true. It's like, it takes, if they're doing it just to make an appearance, to say, see how progressive we are. We had somebody come in and do a workshop, and then
Yeah.
we ignored everything and we didn't implement anything, especially literally, you could say, are they also open to implementation or execution of what they pulled from this work? Right. And if they're not, it is just a gesture. It's just like, it's a PR
You'd
move
say
rather than a,
performative.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Next one is, could you describe a recent situation where you felt the leader could have benefited from additional training or guidance in culture building, leadership, or both?
Recent experience. I would say yes. Definitely she's for sure open to this perspective of how it is that I come into looking at authentic leadership, and mixing that with holistic health. And then at the same time, I think that there is some benefit to, let's say, the people who are the ones that bring you in. They might be the mediator, you know. But then if it's not just the mediator, which sometimes I think the mediators actually could benefit as well, because they are the ones that are shopping
Right.
for the services and for the tools. I actually think is a bit of benefit to them to actually experience it so that they can actually understand it as well. But then also just the C-suite leader or the manager or the director, definitely, I think if they even get to experience it more fine-tuned to themselves, um, and because then I feel like when you can get that opportunity to actually really work with them, to really get to see like what is it through their lens, right? Like through their lens. And in my space, I'm not only talking about like in the workplace, right? It's also what's happening personally. And I think that that is something that definitely has to be taken into consideration, because what are we also talking about? You have this company that's being operated by humans that also are not just about the company, there's personal as well. So for them to even be able to see like just how much it is that they're influenced by their personal, there is this blend in how it ends up affecting them within the company, and even affecting the type of culture that they're even trying to design for the company. I do believe that it's of high interest and highly encouraged, to to have this, to be able to have some offering and some service for your team, right? For those people, for the mediator, so that the mediator really understands what it is that's going on. And then also for those that would be like the C-suite, the director, the manager, and all of that jazz, right? And then I would say once they kind of get through it, to it even can identify who within the company could also benefit, because you're probably sitting on future leadership
Mm-hmm.
and not seeing it. So, but because of the work that you did and the exploration that you did, your eyes and your perspective are so much more open and so much more wide, and being able to see like, oh, we got some definite juicy gold mines like here, and I want to nurture if that's what they want to do, right? Like I
Mm-hmm.
want to at least have the conversation with them and start that way. You can start creating that pathway for them to be able to come up into the leadership. And we know that that's a thing too. People leave companies because they feel like there's nowhere for them to go. They're not even asked.
Well,
you know?
what you just said, as you were speaking, what popped up in my mind is two things. First of all, when you're talking about humans, it's sort of like business is by definition personal, because remember, those spaces are occupied by human beings who, as you said, have a life outside of it. And if they feel like you're just a number at work, then
Mm-hmm.
needless to say, why would they ever think you're anything but just a number, or a giant
Paycheck.
pen who signs paychecks? So it
Yeah.
goes both ways, and all business is personal. Daniel Pink, one of my favorite books, my favorite book of his in particular was called Drive. And he looked at the research, and this was quite a long time ago. And there's three main things that motivate people. Pay is actually, when you're talking about skilled and creative workers, a poor method for motivating them. When it comes to this, he found three things: mastery, autonomy, and purpose, where mastery is the opportunity to get better at what you do, attracting exceptional talent. To attract, rather than have to go out and headhunt exceptional talent or exceptional employees of any kind, you have to be, in their eyes, worthy of being attracted to. If your workplace culture sucks, don't ever expect anybody to come knocking on your door begging to work for you. People had the choice. You're in Silicon Valley, you have the chance to work at Netflix or Google or Microsoft, and a lot of
Yeah.
people are preferring Netflix. Why? Because their culture was fantastic. And in fact, to the point where they'd say, if a recruiter comes to you with a job offer, or another company comes to you with a job offer, please go and take the interview. Not because we want to lose you, but because we want to learn about what the market rates are and what your demand, and chances are you come back and you tell us and we'll raise you. So the policy at Netflix was essentially, we put you a hair above top market rates. So it's like, we find out what the top market rates are for whatever your skill is. We assume you're great, and if you're not, you shouldn't be here, and we will sort of give you a hug as we kick you out the door with some severance pay, because that's just their criteria. But at the same time, yeah, if you want to, if somebody else is interested in you, please tell us so that we can keep current on the market trends.
Yeah.
And, if you decide to leave, that's cool. But, you doing that for us, and we don't want you to have to hide to look at other opportunities. That helps both of us and we can both win, even if you leave. And
Hmm.
just think of how you would feel working for a company, or how anybody would feel working for a company who says, if you get a better opportunity, I want you to take it because I want you to do well. But the fact that you're not in danger of losing your job just because you talk to somebody.
Yeah,
Right? How many
exactly. I
places
was
have
just
that kind of
thinking
safety? Yeah.
just yeah, I was just thinking that like the safety, the like in a way it's even for the employees like, oh, this is really cool because then at least if there is a way that I could stay, I might stay. And you can actually then, I think through that whole process, it even explores why you were even considering leaving.
Hmm.
So of course, then Netflix is going to want to know, why were you considering leaving? And
Right.
then that opens up a whole nother conversation, right? And
Right.
like you're yeah, like and to have that just open convo there and the ability to have the conversation is
Right.
simply amazing. I've been in a sticky situation, very sticky situation before, and actually had not even formally accepted. And the HR manager told my VP that she got the call to confirm my stuff. And I was like, who could I report you to? Like, it was like, I didn't even know. And it really did make it very, very tense for a
Hmm.
short time period, right?
Hmm.
Um, Now at that time, then the VP said, no, I wish you would have told me because then I could have like possibly helped and all of that stuff too. Which even then that conversation was enlightening because it was like, oh, okay, yeah, you were totally ready for me to go anyway too. Like,
Right.
and why, and which we did have the conversation that just the way that the structure was, they couldn't create something new or even extend budget or anything like that. So we did have that conversation of like, yeah, why was I looking in the first place? It was just the way that it happened that was just quite icky and very, very stressful.
Yeah.
So to have something, a policy like that within Netflix, like you said, we're not sure if that's still in place right now, but like to have
Yeah,
that like
yeah,
culture
I'm
is
basing it
quite
on
cool.
the book as it stood when I read it. And the other thing that they had there, and Patty McCord was their head of HR or head of talent, whatever her role was. Her book talks about it too, except she goes specifically because she was there during the same time
Mm,
as Reed Hastings. And she was the one who actually created much of the culture because she was that HR person. And it was like, it was all about radical honesty. So think of how you would feel to know it's just like, just be radically honest with us. This isn't about being mean to people, but everybody thinks psychological safety is about everybody's feelings being protected. And that's wrong. That's not actually what psychological safety means. It's about not only feeling safe to object, feeling safe to say, I don't know, I'm confused, all those things that make us really human,
right.
but also the right to be able to say up, down, or sideways, I disagree with you, and here's why. And they did a lot of hard work about making basically a framework where you can say, I think you're wrong, or I think we should do it differently. Here's why, here's the actions we can take. Even when it came to supportive or constructive feedback or whatever you want to call it, it was like, it wasn't just you're doing this wrong. It was like, this is what you're doing. Here's what you could do better, or how you could do something better and why it's better. So
Mhm.
it's both sides of it. It's the ability to also disagree and stuff. The reticular activating system. It's part of
Mhm.
your brain.
And the
I'd like to
limbic
show you on
system.
my brain hat, but it doesn't have it, but it's sort of like right there near the middle, and it's like a finger sized piece of your brain that essentially decides to either let things through to your conscious awareness or not. There's tons of things we perceive around us that never become
Right.
conscious because they're not a threat, they're not of value, they're just background noise. So our brain has to decide what is worthy of our attention because our attention is very finite. Therefore, what you're talking about, that's the other thing. If you don't have to worry about surviving in the workplace jungle, what I call vulture culture, about being, pecked at or taken advantage of or competing internally, then you can focus on doing a great job at your job rather than having to save your ass for all the people around you who are trying to backstab you. Because of that, you can now put that attention where it belongs and do your best work. If you have to worry, keep track of all the people and what they're doing and how you're going to maneuver against
all the
them,
calculations and
right? Then all of that mental resource is definitely not going into your work. It's going into the politics. So let's talk about the next question then. And that is, what specific outcomes would you hope to achieve through training in leadership and culture building?
What specific outcomes you said?
Yes.
Okay, so one, definitely a comfort, like just being comfortable. And that is inclusive of safety and non-judgment. Safety, non-judgment, the comfort to allow whatever you offer, whatever you have, and the gifts, the talents, the skills, all of that. It can just be laid out there on the table. It doesn't have to be hidden anymore. Due to that, then another outcome in when I say like holistic health that comes about is this, wow, I can really be myself. And what you were saying with the RAS system, then guess what? Like cortisol levels won't be as high, which means then it'll affect blood pressure, which then will affect, like, how they say about the heart attacks that tend to happen mostly on like Sundays or Mondays, as it's the beginning of work weeks. But then like type 2, high cholesterol, right? Like all of these other quote unquote chronic conditions, they actually started somewhere. So if people are spending a majority of their time and their energy into where they work and what they do, it's like it's seeing how there is this responsibility for the workplace to cultivate an area that is so much more beyond like having health insurance like that. That's definitely a role, but it's more than that. It is just the physical environment, the mental and emotional environment that's there to allow people to just be. And so if they are having this like this feeling of like, oh, I got to put on this mask. And there's this whole thing about code switching and all of that, that actually allocates a lot of energy, even internally. So mentally, it might seem like you're okay, right? Like, in all of that, but it'll start compounding and it'll show up as headaches, right? It'll show up as like body tension. And so then if we go back to what you were saying, even if the CEO and the bosses are just greedy and you're talking about money, imagine then the money that's being spent because they're going to get these treatments that possibly if the culture had changed, they wouldn't have even had those symptoms in the first place. And then the lost productivity of having to go to these appointments and go get these tests and go get these imaging, right? Like all of that is a factor as well. So I see that when you can really look at the culture and how it is that you can create that where in a way, so sometimes people, I think they think that, oh, if we can just do this mass, like we're going to scale, right? So they think of scaling in the sense of just to consumers or to your end user of your product or service, right? To the public. But they also do that within the companies. Like we just want to scale. What happens with that is that you're homogenizing your humans. And that is going to be homogenizing to like one, maybe two ways of seeing that these humans operate and that they are, and that it's not going to work. Like, so I feel like there are ways that you could actually still in a way personalize and customize the cultural environment while maintaining this overall like mission and vision, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's just that in the how, when it comes to the humans that are operating it, it's got its little tweaks here and there to fit them just as much as they're also fitting into the culture itself.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I could see that when it comes to the holistic health side, I can see that when it comes to the comfort of those that are all involved. I see products and services, the quality of those even improving because I feel more invested in it, right? They really feel like they got some skin in the game because they're it's more purposeful, it's more meaningful, they're being listened to, their ideas are being added into the products and services, and outcome actually comes in the form of your improved customers experience.
Mm-hmm.
So now your customers and end users are also feeling the difference. They're like, man, I just love this. Like, and they're going to feel that energy. They're going to see the change. They're like, this company's on top of it. They're innovating all the time. Like they're listening to what we have going on. So you see that just from tweaking and having the culture change from within, it permeates out.
Yeah.
Right. So those are some of the outcomes that I see that would happen.
Now, when you have high homogeneity, when you make the group think, when you make duplicates of people, that just means they come up with the same
Same
stuff
thing. Yep.
and are not really great at innovating. Here's the amazing statistic. Diversity, that is, the groups who are diverse rather than specialized, outperformed the math geeks in math 90% of the time.
Wow.
So diversity beats
Wow.
specialization and expertise in groups 90% of the time, at least according to that specific study. But it really makes sense. It's like, my background is neuroscience and inventing and living in another country and stuff. Having that in a group and then having other things in a group, your experience, your diversity is a whole lot different than mine. Getting a whole bunch of diverse minds together, you have just a larger collection of different knowledge too. And that's what really drives things like innovation.
Yeah.
Let's do the next question. I realize I'm going to go down a rabbit hole if I stay there too long. So, which is always fun, but they always take time. So the next one is, in your opinion, what are the key skills and competencies that leaders should possess to create a thriving organizational culture?
Okay, so definitely with the whole be open.
That
Definitely
makes
the whole be
sense.
open. Yeah, and also so I want to say also deciphering the difference between um seeking acceptance or acknowledgement, and seeing that for yourself, but then also for those that are working for the company. Um, Another would be the art of being present. Um, it's great to so much is said, right? Like, let's review the data. And that data is from the past, right? Like, and that could be in the form of sales, it could be in the form of performances, whatever it is, it's in the past. And at the same time, it's acknowledging that there were certain circumstances and whatnot that was happening in the past. But then now bringing yourself into the present, what's happening,
Mm-hmm.
what's going on. And I think that that's where a lot of people can really succeed when they can be in the present. They're able to glean insight and information that could change the trajectory for products and services that are being produced. And I think that's how it is that you have those certain companies that end up producing these and changing these products and services that are ahead, quote unquote. Seems like it's ahead, but really what it was they created the path, and then others just kind of like followed it, or they
Mm-hmm.
saw just how amazing it was.
So
Yeah.
can I ask you this? Because
Yeah.
I'm going to forget if I wait. And that
Okay.
is, when you're talking present, would you say that is somehow separate from or distinguished from mindfulness? Because when you say present, I think about that in the mindfulness sense. And again, there's lots of good research, not just from hippies and Buddhists.
Mm.
In fact, it's interesting how often Buddhist monks tend to hang out with neuroscientists in their labs because they've had 2,500 years to get good at things like mindfulness. And we have lots of research now about the benefits of not just meditation, but mindfulness and how it affects your brain and your concentration and blah, blah, blah. So is being present and being mindful the same thing, or are they different for what you mean?
So I look at them differently, similar but differently. I even with the push on mindfulness, I actually encourage wholefulness. A lot of things tend to continue to just be focused on the mind. And so even though those who do practice and study mindfulness, they actually understand what I'm saying when I say that it's a wholefulness in the sense of the whole body and the whole being is there. But just the name in and of itself, I don't know if because it was seeking acceptance by other cultures to include the word mind. To me, it still perpetuates that it's just the brain that's involved or the mind is actually involved when really it's the whole body. And so when I say of being present, it's the sense of literally like you wholly being present. It means you going to the line, to the production factories. It's you actually being in these meetings. Just be a fly on the wall. You don't have to always be the one that's leading it and taking action on it. It's just, it's going out to where your customers are, watching them shop, see how they're shopping, how do they make their choices. It's simply to be, right? Like that's how I think about it, is that it's being there to the point that all that you're all that you're really looking at or paying attention to, quote unquote, is what's surrounding you at that moment.
Mm-hmm.
Gathering that information and just kind of being a piece of just kind of being there. Sometimes I feel like what happens is you can go somewhere with this intention and with this purpose, and like that's what you're going to focus on. It's like, I'm going to this meeting to da 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 da. But what if you were to go in to just be? And then you're allowing yourself to just be present and seeing what comes out of it without you actually interjecting. And then see what creative ideas come up.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's where the whole being open thing comes in, right? Because it's more than likely you're going to get some things that you would have never even thought about. It's when you're present, then you're going to start to feel even within your body, like hearing something and your body being like, ugh, or being like, oh my gosh, like it's that somatic response to it that even then you get to explore, whoa, like that happened, that got activated. But then why? Like, could it have been because of some other past experience that because now you would have gone, because you would have understood yourself even more so through this practice, you could see that even then your experience, like, was there a past failure and you're scared of that happening again, and you would have in the past completely kiboshed. We're not doing it like that, right? But then the circumstances and the environment is different. The people who are involved are different. So it could actually be quite the opposite now. And all it took was for you to be open and for you to be present with what's going on right now, right? That you can really see it. I think too that involves the holistic perspective, because that's like another skill that I think.
Mm-hmm.
And when I say holistic perspective, I'm not talking like just natural health. I'm talking about having to understand that it's like there is this physical component, there's the mental, the emotional, the spiritual, the environment, like all of that is involved. And so sometimes you can get kind of laser focused, that's all that it is just being laser focused on that one thing. But when you can really, I say, do that, like you can go ahead, be the camera lens, zoom in, but always know that you're gonna have to zoom out. And then being open, to the other perspectives that are coming in. I really think that is a skill. For some people, it comes more as a gift and a talent, so it comes a little bit more easily. But I do think it is also a skill that can be practiced more and more, just like meditation and just like mindfulness too. It's a practice. And you'll even see that as they talk about them practicing it, it's like different levels that kind of open up, right?
Is what you're calling mindfulness or what you're calling presence, I would call mindfulness, or a more genuine version of mindfulness. And this guy, Daniel J. Siegel, in that book, he talked about that. He just argued, he says, it's just a continuum. This happens to be the concentration of neurons, but then it goes throughout our body, and all of this, and being, you know, sort of aware of the proprioception, the way your body feels, as part of the way you can alter your mind and body, which is a two-way interaction.
Yeah.
And
well, I think we're talking about the same thing. And
we are, absolutely.
Yeah, we're definitely talking about the same thing. And it's just for me, it's kind of similar to what you were saying with the ikigai, and that being
blasphemed.
Yeah, there you go. It's similar to that, right? Like,
right.
And so for me, it's just like, it's not really the mind, like, and so for it to be called like mindfulness, it's like, no, the practice is actually not mindful. It's more than that. And so, and yeah, and that's where it is that, you know, it's this whole misconception, and then therefore to me, like, affects the practice of it, which is then why you're saying like body mind, it's like, yeah, and that's why I'm like, it's the wholefulness, it's the whole you, the whole
I like
being.
your phrase, because it does sort of focus on that super important distinction or nuance, that it isn't just about one piece of the thing. Yeah, I like that. I like that term a lot, because like you said, and this is what tends to happen, especially in a social media soundbite world that we live in. It's like, for example, like I said, going back to psychological safety, was talking about how Twitter had psychological safety, and when they were describing it, it's like, no, they should talk to Amy Edmondson, basically the creator of this stuff, to find out what they're talking about. Psychological safety isn't about the most sensitive people having their feelings protected. It's the ability to basically say anything, as long as you're doing it with civility and respect. What do you think is the ideal duration for a comprehensive course on transforming workplace culture, leadership, or both? And I know that
I was
because
thinking lifetime.
yes, that's true. That's true.
Okay, so the reason why I'm hesitating a bit is because you threw me off when you said this is not the implementation part. And the reason why I say that is because I design my stuff where implementation is put in.
Right.
And you actually learn through the experience. And so
well, how long is that?
Like, so, and at the same time you're talking about primer. And so something that I'm working on right now is that we're not really calling it a course. It's more like a retreat, but you're learning, once again, it's like you're learning while you're experiencing it. So that one is actually like more 3 to 4 hours. And it's primer. It's enough where it is that we're going to cover, we're going to go a little bit deeper than the surface level. Because the way that it's presented is that you're actually taking your observations that's already there, and we're just going to be categorizing it, and then seeing, from that point, all right, now what can we do with it? And so, seeming as your question said primer, I would say then we go in and we do this like 3 to 4 hours mini retreat. And you'll get a good amount. And then we can expand it, because you're going to need the time space of the implementation, and you're going to be learning. So it's like you're even taught that as you're implementing, you're still learning.
Mm-hmm.
And so then you just kind of like continue on
Mm-hmm.
with that. Things are going to come up and then you're asking questions. So I'm all about speed.
Okay.
Which
So,
is why I say that 3 to 4 hours, like, let's get
right.
in there. Three,
That
4 hours
seems super
primer
fast.
retreat.
Let
Let's
me
do
let
it.
me flip it back to I'm going to flip it back to the original question, because of
Okay.
course we're never done. We're always, as human
Right.
beings, works in process. So what do you think is the ideal duration for a comprehensive course on transforming workplace culture, leadership, or both?
I feel like we could just get in there 6 months,
Mm-hmm.
and there will be that intensive time on the front end, like front loading.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then the rest of it is actually the experiment, is what I like to call it, the playful experiment. So you start implementing things, and then you start assessing, making observations, and then we continue to make tweaks. I prefer shorter time frames because it's kind of like, what is it, Parkinson's law? Like, is
Um,
is that Parkinson's? However
no,
long.
it's Pareto's principle, the 80-20 rule.
Oh, no. I'm talking about the one where it's
Oh,
however long it is that you allow is how long it's going to take.
I can't remember what that one is, but yeah, basically what it will expand to fill the time that's available. I know the one
Right.
you mean. I don't remember the
Yeah.
name of it.
I'm like, I think it's Parkinson's. Oh, now I feel like I gotta go look this up. But so I understand that time is of the essence for many companies and for many organizations. And they want to just see their money work. Like, you're investing in your culture. I feel like when people say it takes time for a culture to change, I agree, sort of not agree.
Hmm.
Because I feel like if you just make the choice that the culture is going to change, you're just going to do it and you're going to start implementing it for it to happen. So um, I feel like it could happen quite quickly, especially when people have this understanding of it's not just blindly going in. So
Hmm.
when you go in with this intensive on the front end and you actually have something to anchor why your culture is changing in the first place, because based on the makeup of who is there, then it's easier to make the culture change. It's like, oh, well, we see that this is dominating. This isn't as dominating. What are we going to do now
Right.
to, best leverage what we have? Why would I delay that? I don't want to delay that to make this out to be like a year or anything. I really feel like, nope, short term, even in that intensive, you can set some changes, create some changes right there, and then give you the time to implement it more widely, and then just keep refining it. So I believe that culture can change quite quickly with the
Hmm.
people that are at the helm who feel confident behind it, which is why I like that assessment, because then it gives them something, like I said, to ground into. It does feel more personalized as well. Um, it's more well-rounded to when I say, because it is this blend of leadership and holistic health,
Hmm.
like it's really taking into consideration the whole being. And
Hmm.
so if you think about buy-in as you start to create change in culture, now those that they're like, oh, you're actually considering that I'm a whole human being. What? You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So then it's like, dang, they understand this part of me now, or at least they're open to this conversation of this part of me. So
Hmm.
because of that, once again, now they're like, oh, they could have reactivated their whole purpose of being there. So
Right.
now their buy-in and their ease to the change is going to be shorter.
Hmm.
So I really think that, yeah, like 6 months comprehensive, we can get in there. And then, at the end of it, it's like, of course, the lifetime, like things are changing, whatever. And so, yeah, you could
Right.
renew in a different way, but 6
Yeah,
months.
immediate change that can happen is like, oh, I should stop like belittling my staff because that doesn't really work for me, and that's why they keep quitting. It's
Yeah.
like then you can just stop doing that.
And then there is for some of them, even then, it's just like, this is where the be open thing comes in, right? Like, I don't belittle people. If several people are telling you that you are, this might be the opportunity to just be open and accept that, oh, this is also what I pointed out before, whether you're seeking acceptance or agreement.
Hmm.
So you may not agree that you're belittling, but you can accept that this is how it's being perceived.
Hmm.
And so from that perspective, what are you choosing to do?
So what factors would influence your decision about that ideal duration?
I really feel like it's who's ever in that initial intensive, and it's their state. It's the just how open are they and the willingness to change. Um, it's the openness and the willingness to change. So, if I feel like it could go faster if they're the types that are like, sweet, we have a better understanding of this, so let's go ahead, let's implement this. Like, who are my implementers within the company, and they just kind of go full speed ahead. Could it be longer if they're the ones that tend to well, change takes time, like, so it's all in belief. So
Yeah.
if you believe that it's going to take time, then I'm going to ask you, so what's your time frame? Like, because then that's how long it's going to take us then.
Hmm.
But if you believe that there's changes that can happen within the 3 hours that we're here, then that's also what's going to happen. Both
Hmm.
exist. So so I think it really boils down to like really the belief system. Um, and then also I, I, for lack of a better word, I'm thinking about influence.
Hmm.
Um, so sometimes there are people that are actually in the training that actually can't implement as much as we're talking about it. So that's the question then, is who are you choosing to be in the training and to study? Why are you choosing them to do it, to implement change, if they actually don't have that influence to do the change?
Hmm.
So I think that those are some factors, very big factors, as far as like, could it be shorter or could it be longer? Because then now you just have this person going through this training, and then the people who actually need to implement the change, they have to go through it like later on, or something like that, right? Um, so I think that's huge. And also I feel like having representatives from different perspectives and different levels. So quite possibly not just C-suite, not just middle management,
Hmm.
have also representatives from the other direct reports. If you can't have all of the levels in together at one time, then at least have reps coming
Hmm.
in, because once again, it's that perspective, right? The
Hmm.
perspective of from each of those levels and how it's going to impact. And when you can come together, you can create the change, create the changes together, and then it'll be like it's just like sweet, and then that also affects buy-in.
Hmm.
Somebody who's at one level had a rep for their level, they're like, okay, they held it down for us, like, this isn't just
Right.
coming from top telling us again what to do, and they have no understanding of what it's really like it creates the buy-in, and then that'll definitely speed things up, because they're like, all right, cool, they're going to trust the people on their level, you
Right.
know and be more willing to do some changes there.
Which formats or delivery methods do you think would be most effective for this kind of training?
Definitely a hybrid approach. Um, where the intensive, in person, I think would be most influential.
Hmm.
Um, and then that way you have those that are already there in the room, and we can just get to our play. We'll just start playing like immediately and start creating at that time. So that would be the format. It's engaging. So it's gonna be some movement that's involved there. Just trying to keep it light at the same time. And then you kind of end it with, all right, so here's some things that this is what we're going to experiment with. This is how we're going to start this experiment, and give that time for those things to be implemented. And then you can come back together in person, or it could even just be virtually to see what's going on. Sometimes I feel like it might take also, let's say, if you're starting to see a pattern from the reports of implementation, if you're starting to see certain patterns, then it might be worth, going in live to see what's going on, to speak to those that those changes are affecting, to get their perspective, possibly even facilitating a play shop around that as well. So I feel like definitely on the beginning side, it's going to be a lot more hands-on, a lot more intensive. Ideally, then they can become more spaced out, and then you can rely definitely more on the virtual side of being able to have those conversations and to conduct any types of other, like I said, if we have to create a new play shop around a theme that we're seeing, then that's what we do.
Right. Yeah. Just be adaptive, which is, the way nature tends to work.
Yep.
It adapts to the environment. And if it does not, it dies out. And those that did adapt or were able to adapt thrive. Just a sort of random aside, I was going to say it earlier, but I didn't really get the right time to do it. It is indeed Parkinson's law. You are 100% correct. So respect. I think people should get credit where credit is due. When it comes to investing in leadership and culture development, what criteria do you consider when determining the value of training?
Okay, say that one more time.
Yeah, it's too long. I'm still working on it. So let me put it this way. When it comes to investing in leadership and culture development, what would you use to determine the value of the training?
What would I use to determine the value of the training? Oh, okay. So I would think about, let's say, the mission and the vision of the company itself. How much does that really apply to the people that are operating it? I would also look at if there's any information as far as any complaints. I'd look at retention rates or rates of those that are leaving. I would be looking at your health costs. So like health insurance, like premiums, is it that they're citing that, oh, this was used more and this wasn't, like that kind of thing. I would take a look at call outs as well. Tardiness.
What do you mean by, what do you mean by call outs other than tardiness?
Yeah, like they're actually just calling out of work for whatever reasons.
Oh, okay. So somebody saying I'm sick today or I can't do this today. So, okay. Call outs is people sort of self-excusing from work and giving the reason why they're doing it. Okay.
Yeah. I would also take a look at project times. If there were projects that it seemed like it would, like the discrepancy between this is what we were expecting and this is what actually happened. Because from there, sometimes I think that you can see where is it that quite possibly one way was being pushed, which might have limited the creativity of another way of it happening, and it could have been done on time or even earlier.
Mhm.
There is also, oh, sorry, this is kind of hanging out there too, of just like things dragging,
Mhm.
things dragging along.
So I'm going to try to put a word in your mouth, and this is one of the authors I mentioned, the name of one of his upcoming books. I don't think this is necessarily what he means, but it's just the right word: friction,
Mm.
resistance.
I think of procrastination.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Resistance actually, I think it's a part of procrastination.
Mm-hmm.
So I could see that happening. Like, I actually think procrastination is a sign that quite possibly someone is not, they're not able to do something in a way that, or they might feel like or think that they can't do something in a way that they might want to do it.
Right.
So, yeah, I think that comes down to the psychological safety part of it, or that they're hesitating. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Because more than likely they may not have the safe space to communicate as to why they they think or feel this. And so yeah, I think that's a big one. And even for myself, if I'm procrastinating at something, it's like there's some part of this that's
Can you share your thoughts on the frequency of coaching sessions? That is, for this kind of a thing, let's say you start with an initial thing and then you have an extended thing like you were talking about, right? So you have an initial intensive and then perhaps a 1 month, or sorry, 6 month program, the more comprehensive. The thoughts on the frequency of coaching sessions, whether that's weekly, twice a month, monthly.
so I really feel like more frequent in the beginning because that's
Mhm.
when the most energy is definitely there, the attention is there, um, and then transition to space it out where it could definitely be once a month. This is where this you practice what you preach, right? This is
Mhm.
honoring that person. So honoring that person's style. Some styles are definitely more autonomous and they can go ahead and implement, do changes and all that jazz on their own, and they're just fine having that once a month check in. But then there's others that they need a little bit more nurturing and more frequent check in, and that's okay too.
Mhm.
So you end up, personalizing that even more. Sometimes I think too, it takes just being creative where it may not have to be such a formal like formal call, if you
Mhm.
will, but it could be something like a chat, like a typing chat or a Voxer, where at least you just kind of get your question out there and then it's asynchronous and getting a response back. Um, I think it just depends on the person for sure, and their style and
Mhm.
kind of like accommodating it to that. And
Right.
then while at the same time, you got to be open to if some things come up that the frequency might have to increase. Um, or even for myself, if I'm starting to see a pattern, then to bring it to their awareness, like, the once a month thing isn't quite happening very well. Like, and so what do you
Right.
say that we do every other week and then go from there?
Between the coaching sessions, which types of support or mentorship outside of the scheduled training would be most beneficial?
So as far as if I'm actually being the one to consult and do it, I personally believe that, hey, if you can do it on your own outside of our sessions, and then just kind of, if you need a spot to put your questions, right? Here's your spot. And
Mhm.
then just know that we'll address it when we meet.
Mhm.
Unless, like I said in the very beginning, sometimes it does take like we got to talk a little bit more, because you'll see it naturally start to taper off, then we can do that, whether that is through text chat or through Voxer, or something similar to Voxer where it's voice. So I'm really big on, hey, you got this. You can you can go and you can implement it and then just play around with it. And at the same time support that if you got the questions, you got the questions. That's what I'm here
Right.
for, to
So
answer.
that's sort of more the core of that question is, if they do need that support outside of the training, what sort of support or, other things, but like I said, so it doesn't fall between the cracks. They go, I'm mostly good, but I have some questions.
Yeah,
How
I would
often should that be available, or and what form would it take?
I would still fall under the same thing as far as jotting them down, like if it's in your notebook
Hmm.
for it, or if it's sending chat, email, Voxer, asking those questions, and then it's agreed upon ahead of time, like what the response might be.
Hmm.
And so if that's going to be like 48 hours, 72 hours, if it's an SOS, make sure you say it's an SOS to try to expedite a response back. And
Right.
that, yeah, that's what I was talking about, was referring to in between the sessions themselves.
Realistically, how often would be practical and sustainable? Now we're talking about this same between the gaps support.
Between the gaps, realistic, I say 48 hours
Hmm.
response time. Um, Depending on, you know, like sometimes it could be 72 depending on where the days and the hours fall, right?
Right, right.
But I think that having a response time as such as that would be really great. Now, this is
Hmm.
also based on built into, if you're perfect for and ideal for this program, it's also seeing that you do have self leadership. So if I even start to see like, oh, is there so much reliance, then I start to question, like, what are you questioning about yourself and what are you questioning about your own abilities? And then that is a whole different other conversation, if you will.
Hmm.
So like, because I that's the approach that I take, is really being able to see what's within people already, and then I'm just helping you be able to see that and then being able to see how we can apply that. So if I start to see that wavering of the confidence, it's like,
Hmm.
all right, that might need to be our focus on our next session, right? Or what
Right.
we might want to chat about. But yeah, I do think the 48 hours to 72 response time was just should be just great.
How do you envision the course, basically what we've talked about thus far, helping you address specific cultural or leadership challenges, either within your organization or those of your clients?
How do I see it? And
How do you envision the course we've described
mhm.
helping them address specific cultural or leadership challenges?
I think I see it that it is going to actually, I don't want to use the word enlighten. It would actually raise awareness around seeing what gifts and talents are already there and already
Hmm.
present. So sometimes people think the things are missing, so they always are looking to fill in. And I see it where you could actually see what's already there. And then by seeing what's already there, then you now can get creative on how you can really use that and leverage that to still meet or exceed whatever goals and intentions are set for the company. And to be able to do so in a way that meets people where they are seen as a whole person. We can do it by doing it in this way, it could be sustainable, right? Like so it's not so high pressure. It's not this friction all the time. It's not that's like um this inauthenticity. amongst the people where they do feel unsafe. That
Mhm.
all creates the stress, which is going to affect the health, which is going to affect productivity, which is going to affect, So I see it as it actually can improve relationships, not only relationships within the teams, but the relationships within the company itself. The relationship with your customers are all going to be improved. And the purpose and the meaning is there. It's going to be reestablished, reactivated. I see that the inspiration and motivation is definitely going to be increased as well. Buy-in is going to be increased as well because they're being seen, right? As this whole person, they're being heard. They're encouraged to create and be involved and not be as passive while being there.
Research seems to say that for most people who have experience, losing an employee is roughly equivalent or equal approximately in cost to 6 months of their wages. 6 months to a year of their wages. Who do you know who could benefit from or would be willing to be interviewed by myself on this very topic?
I think I actually introduced y'all. I don't know if you got together or not. It was Kathy Saylor?
It's on the books. I don't think we've done it yet, but yeah, the
Okay.
name is okay. So we've already done that question. It's all good. All good. Okay, next one. Who do you know who is looking for guests about these topics in their podcasts or summit? That is, now we're flipping the script to where I am a potential guest for podcasters or other interviews such as this one, but I'm the guest.
Okay, so I'm not coming up with anyone off the top of my head right now. But I am actively looking for myself too. And I'm really good about passing information along. So so as I see them, I will for summits, I do summits actively as well. So I will let you know what I find out and then send
Sure. How could I make this interview better?
Let's see.
You have to go, so please get back to me about that one. That's fine with me.
The only thing I could think of is I don't know, because everyone's show is different. So some people, it's the consistency, like their show is actually these questions. Everybody's going to answer the same thing. So if that's your show, that's your show. And maybe so then if that's the case, then give me cues of kind of shorten that response or something or whatever it might be. I don't know if you wanted it shorter, shorter responses.
I want people to give their natural response. And then doesn't mean I won't edit it necessarily if it's really long, but I want people to say everything they have to say, because this is for the learning, more than anything, my learning and edification. At that, I'll let you go. Thank you for the generosity of your time. If you think of anything else in terms of how I can make it better, I really do want to know. Okay?
Okay.
Thank you, Denicia. Take care. And I will let you know when this goes up, send you
Okay.
links, and we'll talk about the details then. Bye-bye.
Awesome. Have a good one.